you guys are so lucky to be here. This is the best speaker ever. This is the father of this museum. He created it. It's like the god of the museum. He created it, and now he's taking care of it, and he's got a great talk for you. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Ray, go for it.
I guess everybody knows me. I'm going to start it off. I didn't get involved until 2002, but there was a whole group of people that got this building and started it up. So I'm going to start my talk with John Trumbull. He's going to give a short introduction on what happened before 2002 on it.
Every star needs a warm-up act. I'm the warm-up. The way I was thinking about this thing, and I've been considering it now for about a week or so, usually at 2 in the morning. But you know, there have been 3 real phases here for the Guild. The first phase started in 1976. Well, if it wasn't for 1776, we wouldn't have started it either. But Peg Cody and Jackie Moore and Colonel Bill Palmer all got together and they started a museum downtown. That's the postmaster's house. Now that was a lovely museum. It was run by the house, as you probably know, was dedicated, given to the city by Fabian Bobo when he wanted to develop a piece of land that it was sitting on. So the city council got involved in that too. Now, the museum was interesting, but it was a little bit like going into a second-hand shop. Jackie Moore was the volunteer curator, and she collected all sorts of good things from the citizens of Novato and got our collection started, but it wasn't displayed as a museum per se. Now I ended up getting elected as the president of the Guild in 1966, and my first contact with the Guild was to create a contract for Hannah Claiborne to come in as a consultant to the Guild to tell us how to display the things that we had in the postmaster's house. That worked out. It turned out that we got Hannah hired by the city the next year to be the curator. And when she moved in, that disturbed everything. She wanted to reshuffle the items that we had, and the Guild actually went through a catharsis at that point in time. Pat Willett led the charge. I was right behind her, pushing and shoving. We got an interesting goose, you might say. Mrs. DeBorba died and left us $25,000. The problem was, at that time, the Guild board of the Guild bylaws stated that the Guild couldn't hold property. We were just basically volunteers for the city. It was the city's house and the city's artifacts, and the money couldn't come to the Guild. It went to the city and became known as the DeBorba Trust. They couldn't spend it for us, and we couldn't spend it for us, and it ended up sitting there for a number of years until the 2000s. So it sat there for a long time. Meanwhile, Hannah started reorganizing the Guild, and that exacerbated the relationship we had with a lot of the old timers. Jackie Moore left. Bill Palmer, who had started the Hamilton collection in the upstairs back bedroom, got perturbed, and he left, and that sort of broke up that collection. So for a while we had a few items relating to Hamilton, but nothing particularly to show for it. Then it came time for the redevelopment of Hamilton. Remember, Hamilton ceased being a military base in 1975, and nothing happened here because everybody would, first of all, the Navy came in and took over all the housing, and that pretty much closed down anything that was going on. The Hamilton Airport, remember we were going to have, the city of Novato was going to have the Marin County Airport? No, it wasn't going to do that. That got tied up in court and hearings for a number of years. It was the Berg Revore, remember Berg Revore came through with a master plan that was related to the transportation to the railroad, which wasn't functioning at that point in time. And then he lost in the downturn of the 80s, he lost his financing and that plan died. So it was the late 1990s that Taylor Woodrow came through and actually had a viable master plan and financing for it. I am not sure that I am correct in saying that part of the base surplusing plan required that there was going to be a place on the base for preserving the history. But it was sort of understood that that was going to happen. And so consequently the Guild was in contact with Phil Brown, who was the city manager at the time, and was very supportive of the Guild to the extent that he could within his budget. We anticipated we were going to have a museum out here. It was intended, we thought, to be in the back part of Building 500, which was the base headquarters. I think Pat followed me as the president of the Guild in 1997, and I think it was somewhere around that point in time that Berg Revore came to the council for its final approval of the master plan. That's something that was actually going to happen out here in Hamilton. Bill Palmer, who was still connected with the Guild, although he wasn't wasn't maintaining his display area, informed us that he'd heard that the Indian Valley artists were going to be asking for the entirety of Building 500, and they had a plan that was bulletproof. They were going to pay rent. They were going to lease out portions of that building to individual artists, and they were going to maintain a public area in the building, but they were going to pay rent. And we in the Guild saw that going down the tube. Now, Bill said, go in there and ask for the firehouse. Well, the firehouse, this is the firehouse, was sitting in an area that was designated as a 2-acre park. You'll notice it's not 2 acres now, that's kind of dwindled away, but the building is still here and there's still a park. So Pat and I showed up, and we had with us a picture of the firehouse in the 30s. And we made our pitch, and he said, all right, since we can't get into Building 500, give us the firehouse. In the back of the room at the time of the meeting, the president of the Taylor Woodrow was sitting very quietly. He was the last one on the agenda, and it was about 1 in the morning, as I recall. It was late in the meeting, anyhow. And Pat and I stood up and made our presentation, and that gentleman stood up and said, if the city council gives the building to the Guild, or not gives the building, they create a museum there in that park, in that building, I will replace the doors. Now the firehouse, the crash trucks and the fire department had moved out of the building a long time back, and it was in essence an extension of administration from Building 500. And this whole area in here was filled with a warren of little cubicles for typists and things like that. The doors, the original doors had been removed and bricked in, and there were individual doors like you're going into your closet type of thing that were here for people to come in and out. That sounded good, and the city council, bless their hearts, said, all right, we will do that. We will reserve that building as a museum. Then Phil Brown and the council allowed me to make sure that that offer was included in the minutes of the meeting. It was, I think, that was about 1998, Pat, someplace in there, late 1990s. It was in the early 200s that finally we actually got access to this building. And during that period of time, by the way, the idea of a museum in Hamilton was not unanimously accepted by the Guild. There was a lot of internal conflict in the Guild as to whether we could actually run two museums. There was a concern in the city council as to whether the city could afford two museums. So the birth of Hamilton came with labor pains. But happily, the delivery system arrived. I don't know how it got here, but it got here, and without this gentleman who was about to tell you how the whole thing came together, we wouldn't have had a museum here. So, Ray.
All righty. Now you got the featured speaker, which is going to be boring. When she mentioned Bill Kelly, who was an architect, he drew up plans. He also convinced some of the contractors to do a little extra work around here. That's what the building looked like back then. He convinced them that they should put some dirt up against it and build it up so it could be ADA accessible and a few other things. You can see here where there used to be an extension off the back of this building. There was a 3-cell brig back there. And they had torn that down and nobody knew why or what. Nobody had been given permission to do it, but they had started to tear it down before we got involved on it. And you can see there what the back of the building looked like. I got involved in 2002. I got on the board of directors of the Guild, and they were talking about this museum and this building, and that they had new doors coming in for the front of it. You saw earlier a picture of the front of the building with no doors in it, and they had this fabulous price to knock out the concrete and make the holes for the doors and put the ironwork back in. Well, I had a little experience in construction and stuff, and I said, let me go down and look at it, and we'll see what's involved in this. We poked a hole in the ceiling. And I got up in there and looked, and I could see that the doors had been filled in with hollow haydite blocks, and they hadn't been filled with concrete or no rebar or anything. So I went back to the Guild and told them I'd do the whole job for half the price. They didn't take me up on it, unfortunately. I mean, I'd be rich now. So we ended up doing it. We started in demolition in the building. I don't know if it was official or not, but we started work in here. And one of the first ones to do a lot of work in here was John Trumbull. He took off all the acoustical tile in the ceiling, and which was quite a job. As you can see there, was a lot of tile. One of the things the Guild had mentioned that they had talked to the fire department about helping maybe do demolition work here, and they had backed out. I had 35 years with the fire department as a volunteer, and so I talked to the assistant chief and asked if I could put out a memo to the crew getting off of the shift to volunteer to come out here and do some demolition work. And he said, sure. So the thing went out to the stations. Anybody that wanted to come down at 8 o'clock on a certain day to help do some demolition work. Well, unbeknownst to me, the battalion chief that was on that day also assigned it as a drill for the department. And we ended up with not only volunteers off duty, but we ended up with an engine company, truck company, ambulance, water tender, and so we had all kinds of people out here. So at 8 o'clock we started tearing out all the ceiling in here. This had been made into an office building, so there were partitions and a lot of stuff in here. And you can see they were tearing everything out, not only down here, but also up in the reception area up there on it. There. By noon, they had this area all cleared, and that's what they took out. You know, and that was just in 4 hours. Don't let the fire department into your house to do any demolition work. Yeah. That's what it looked like when they got done. They swept the floors and everything. I cleaned it right up on it. John Trumbull had brought his van down here, his mobile home down here, and he was going to go out and get stuff for lunches. Well, about 10 o'clock, I got a call from the fire department, from the secretary down there, wanting to know how many people we had here. And so I said, oh, I'll call you right back. So I went out, counted the number of people, and I called her back, and she said, well, lunches will be there about noon. So the fire department supplied lunches for everybody. Being it was a drill and it was a, you know, a regular fire department function. So we had a nice picnic out there. And everybody left. Except yeah, there we are with our picnic. There's John Trumbull contemplating what our next step was, which was getting out the doors. A fellow by the name of Bob Ruzick, Captain Ruzick, retired from the fire department, showed up just as we were disbanding the picnic. And he was upset because he didn't get to do anything. So I said, Bob, come in and I'll show you what you can do. And I gave him a sledgehammer and he poked a hole in the wall. And I said, well, you can, you know, just go around and knock this all out and we'll open it up. So he did. He and the assistant chief knocked out around the wall, and that's how we got the doors, two of the doors out there. They just went around it, pushed it out. They did the two big doors in here. You can see they're looking out at it. Did the second one. Then we're sitting here with an open building. What do? John Trumbull took his thing downtown. I had him get some plywood. So he brought plywood back and we made a couple of hole coverings there on it. And there's the doors out there. The other two, myself, and here we are taking the other two doors out that are in the outside, and my daughter on it. And there's the the building all cleaned up there after we got the doors out. We had to get rid of all of that concrete that was sitting out on the lawn. So we jackhammered it up, and John Trumbull took 99% of it up, wheelbarrowed it up, and the city had given us a couple of dumpsters. Like I say, he did 99% of it. I think I did 1 or 2 loads, but that was it. After he did that, he ended up getting a new hip, but you know, and you know, he needed a little relaxation there in between. There. Well, then we had to block up all 4 doors. We also started inside knocking out some walls. And so we had plans from Bill Kelly for the building, and he had marked out all the walls and everything that had to come out. They were all made of this hollow red tile. And this is an area up there that's between this side of the building and the other side of the building. This building was divided in half. Upstairs in the 2nd floor, this side was the military police. This side was the fire department. Their rooms up there. They could not get back and forth. Down here, this area was open, but up in the reception area there, you could not get from this side to that side. If a fireman wanted to talk to a policeman, he had to go outside the building and walk all the way around and back in to it, because there was no interconnection inside the building on it. In that area up there that we, was the boiler room, right between the two areas. Had an old cast iron boiler in there. The guild wanted to know how I was going to get that out of there. I had 30 plus years in the air conditioning business, doing heavy equipment, and boilers, large tonnage equipment. I said, no problem. It was a cast iron boiler, some through bolts, cut those out, knocked it apart with wedges. The 2 of us took it out, built glass, and most of the pieces we could just lift up, flip over, and put out. The 2 end pieces, Bill's truck, we used his winch off the front of it and pulled them out. But and here's a hole. We got the backside knocked out, and there's what it looked like when we got it cleaned up. The boiler was down there, and also hot water tank and boiler. And so there's the one of the tank that was down there, the hot water heater, and all that stuff was taken out. We also took out all the radiators in the building, and all the iron work. The maintenance department was very happy to take away, because they took it to the dumps and used the money for their Christmas fund, for their Christmas party.
I didn't know that.
The city's not supposed to know about that. But anyway, but that was one of our hard jobs. Then we started taking out more of the building. One of my biggest helpers. And now that I'm incapacitated, she's even a bigger help. You see, we had to knock out an awful lot of tile and load it into dumpsters. We ended up taking out 18 dumpster loads. As I mentioned, the city said they'd supply a couple. I didn't know the difference. I just kept calling the company to come pick them up, and they brought me a new one. So finally somebody caught on, and after 18, we had to stop that on it. But we could only fill them up part way with that heavy stuff. One of them we filled up too much, and we had to empty part of it out. We had a lot of help. This is Don Morosi. He's a volunteer fireman there. There was some of it was the offices upstairs were wood framed and sheetrock. There's Bill Kelly, came by to inspect our work and stuff. John Trumbull carrying some of it out. Bill Glass knocking it out. He was great with that sledgehammer. I don't know. That's a 16-pound sledgehammer. I have it up in my office. I use it for a doorstop. Well, I can't bend over, so it's got a handle on it, so it's real nice. But Bill was very instrumental in our demolition there. He liked swinging that hammer on it. You can see, we upstairs we had it cleaned out, and the walls that were up there, we just pushed the stuff down the stairs, and then they wheelbarrowed it out. There you can see this was where the restrooms were up there on it. There are restrooms on either side. We had to strip those down. The partitions and stuff in there were all marble. We all, in the older buildings, you noticed all the restrooms had a lot of marble in them. Well, these were all marble partitions in there. Now they're the bar and part of the stuff at the Druids Hall. We tried to recycle what we could, but a group of Druids come down and carried all those out. That was fun, getting those down the stairs. We even found old newspapers and all kinds of stuff stuck in the holes there on it. There's John Trumbull jackhammering up the floor in the restroom on it, taking out the walls. Like I say, all of it stuff had to be wheeled out. This is what looked like. You can see the outline of the stairs there, where they were. We took out the stairs on that side. The stairs on this side were supposed to come out, according to Bill Kelly's drawings, but I decided to leave them in because, well, just for access, and would take them out later on it. Fortunately, I left them in. If we had known what was going to happen later on, I would have done some other things different, but we had a plan that was given to us on it. There's a set of stairs that were left in on it. You can see the hole there. I covered the hole up there with plywood just so nobody would fall in it on it. You can see up there now, this was where the stack for the boiler, the flues went up the back of the building That's what it looks like now after we did it. Finally, the doors got here, and we were ready for them. They came in on a truck, and crew unloaded them, brought them in. They were so happy that the steel work was still there that they didn't have to do that, and they painted them. Not a very good job, but anyway, they painted them. They were all lined up in the there, and they painted them there. They fabricated hinges. Those were all handmade hinges. These doors were made in Mexico. Taylor Woodrow, which John told you, said that they would supply them. They kind of forgot about it from when they said it at the meeting until they actually ordered them. But John had the minutes of the meeting and conveniently showed them, and they agreed. So $50,000 later, we had a set of doors, and they installed them there. Now there's the building with the doors on it. And there it sat from 2002, and nothing was done until 2007, when one of our meetings, I got a little upset. Bill Kelly's plans and stuff for this building were great, but they were a little grandiose for our budgets. So, and the big holdup was money for get an elevator in here and to do the second floor. They had a person that or a company that wanted the second floor because of the outlook on the bay, and but by 2007 had said forget it. You know, they had to. They were over in building 500 on the second floor, and they got kicked out of there because Mocha wanted it. They wanted the rest of the building. So they had to go somewhere else. So we lost the tenants for the second floor. So there's nobody going to pay for the improvements on the second floor. I told Rod Wood and that as far as we were concerned, that was attic space. We weren't going to do anything up there. We were only going to develop this area and the lobby up there. And so the city decided that that was okay. We'd have to have a locked door, couldn't get up there and all that. It worked out real good on it. They insisted on hiring their own architect. I had already had sprinkler plans from that were fire sprinkler plans that were approved by the fire department and everything for the building. We paid for that. The guild did, but that had to go under the new architect, they said. This architect was supposed to have designed museums before. Well, we had a lot of problems. And when they wrote up a set of specs, I worked with a city engineer and told her a lot of things on the specs that were wrong, that needed to be corrected. And her remark to me was, we have extra money in there to take care of these contingencies. And I says, well, you don't have enough. And I said, when we go out for bid, I said, I want a walkthrough of all the bidders. And they said, no, we can't do that. Well, that's not right. I've been on, in my previous job, I'd been on a lot of bidding walkthroughs on it. So we had several contractors come and go through the walkthrough, bid the job. One company did not go through the walkthrough, bid the job strictly off the specifications. Well, they got the job. So, Pace Construction. Now they're a very reputable company and everything. So, I mean, no problem there. They came in, put up fence around the building, moved in a trailer, and we're getting all ready to start work. I came down and took the superintendent, brought him in the back door, and first thing I asked him, I says, what are your plans on the lead paint? He says, what lead paint? There's nothing in the specs about lead paint. I says, I know. So he turned around and walked out. I went back to the city, told them have to abate the lead paint before the contractor will start their work. So they got a contractor. They'll come in and abate the lead paint. There's their little shed where they have to suit up everything. They did a pretty good job. Everything was covered, and they scraped the walls. They did not sandblast the walls. They just scraped all the loose paint off on it. You can see where they had it all up. Then the contractor came back in. Actually, they did a couple things outside the building before they went in. They hooked up the water line because that had all been disconnected. There was no electricity in here, no water or anything in here. Hooked up a water line. I supplied them the new valve because the existing valve that was there I didn't like. Put in temporary electric power to the building, and started on the plumbing. They brought the plumbing line in where the drawing said to, and I had said, well, now you got to bore it through the other way because it's the wrong side of the foundation. They had to bring in a boring machine and bore through the there to get underneath there. You can stand up under there. Under here, you can crawl. There is some room, but there's a lot of rocks and stuff on it. Where the women's restroom is now, that used to be a patio there. And so they stubbed all the lines up, and then they boarded it in, put a bigger window and stuff in there, and in both the men's room and the women's room there. All the piping had to come up through what the architect had as a 2x4 wall. It's kind of hard to put 4-inch pipe in a 2x4 wall. So that all had to change. And it should have been divided equally. If you notice, the women's room is a lot smaller than the men's room on it. Because they used an existing line on the print on it. All the irrigation had to be moved because it was in line with the side of the building, which would be covered over with concrete. So they moved all of the plumbing out there on it. Oops. Another good mistake, this has to be ADA. So they had to put this ramp in here. And this is what it looked like originally, the set of stairs there on it. They had already removed the railing off of it and just had a temporary wooden railing up there. There they are framing in the railing on it. The original ones that's on the drawings only came down to the end. When the contractor came in to put it in, that won't meet ADA requirements, because halfway down you have to have a flat area. Every so many feet you have to have a flat area. You can't make it down all the way. So that's why the jog is in there, because there's a flat area behind me and then a flat area at the end and down on it. Another extra on it. There. It's all framed in. Oops. One of the biggest mistakes, I think, and I told the contractor to extend all the way up. The architect had a set of stairs right up at the corner there, so if you came in the door, you could go straight down the stairs. That's not a very good safety thing. You know, a guy like me on a walker come in and miss the turn and go right down. So, also, they were going to, the door that's there, they were going to fill that in, and he wanted a 10-foot door right in the middle there, cut in the concrete. And I said, why do you want a big double door in there? He says, well, if you want to move some big stuff into the library, you'd have the door there to do it. And I says, well, how would we get it into here? He says, through the big doors there. I said, that's good. What about the big doors in there? So that saved some money. We didn't have to cut that. We did have to move that door a little bit there, but and you know, what was aggravating is most of these things were brought up before the specs went out, so that they could have been written properly. They had to tear up all the old concrete out front. Bill Kelly had them push the dirt up against there, and it wasn't very compacted, but they had poured a slab out there, and it was leaning. We had to use a sledgehammer to get in the building part of the time, because the back door over there to my office, the concrete was going down, and it was kind of cantilevering on the old steps and kept blocking off the door so it wouldn't open. So periodically we took the sledgehammer and broke the concrete out, but they took it all out. One of the things that was forgotten on the thing, and I did not catch it, but there was no fire line from the building to the street. So how was our sprinkler system going to work? It was not included in the specifications. So they had to come in, and the sprinkler people had just brought it down the side of the building here, and that's where they left it. So they had to come dig a trench out to the street and put in a fire line in. There. I also had to pour a new pad out and back for the electrical system, mount a new transformer. We were lucky. There was the power was right there. There was a manhole right there on our property that they could go into, so they just tied into it with a new transformer. The new electrical system that was put in, I supplied a drawing of the main electrical panel that I wanted, and the circuit breaker panel there on the side I was supplying on it. And they followed that up too. They had them supplying the circuit breaker panel and me supplying the main electrical panel. But we got that straightened out on it. It's a three-phase panel, commercial panel. They wanted to know why I wanted a three-phase panel, and I said, well, if we ever do put an elevator in and stuff, and so I want a three-phase panel for expansion. It's cheaper to put it in now than later on it. Also a second place for another breaker for the second floor on it. They did a real nice installation on that. New water, we had a water heater, electric water heater there. And they cut a new front door in there. There was a small door there, and then they just expanded it and made it into a double door. Did a lot of concrete work around the building. This pathway down the side of the building on this side, the architect had it right next to the building. And I said, it won't work. You can't make the grade. Oh, no problem. No problem. These abutments were put in by one of the contractors that did some upgrades before we got into the building. And it had a 4-inch cap on top of it. He said, you take that cap off the top of it and there's no problem. I said, it still will not make the grade. I said, I don't know how you're figuring this, but you can see how the walk goes around it now, because it would not make the grade. That was all in addition. In fact, there was a lot of argument on that. The cement contractor finally did it according to code, and forgot about all the drawings and everything. You can see how it goes around that, and there was no way. I argued on it that we really didn't need that walk. And he said, oh yeah, according to code you need that walk. Well, according to code, on a fire exit, all you need is X out 15 feet from the building. You know, you really didn't need that, but he insisted it be there. And I'm glad it's there now. I mean, it's real handy on it. Okay, there's where the contractor left it. They did the electrical as far as bringing in the service. They put in the alarms, fire alarm system, and and put the lights in the restrooms. They did not do any of the electrical in the building on it. So they were all done. So that's when we got the building. Oh, they also striped the parking lot and stuff on it, and redid the parking lot on it. I set up my office there, and we moved in equipment to all the construction equipment for our volunteers. The 4-foot pit there that we had a temporary cover on, we had to put a permanent one in there. Dan Johnson and Phil Goebel are trimming it up so we could put it in there. I had a friend that we had went to a 55th class reunion or something, and sat with him, and I knew he had a contractor's license, and I asked if I could use his contractor's license to buy material for the job, and he said, "Oh, sure." And he says, "I'll volunteer to help." Well, he had the second most hours into the project, and unfortunately his wife just passed away yesterday on it. I called him yesterday to see if he was coming today, and I found out that his wife just passed away that morning. That wasn't very nice. But so here he is. That's Bob Lowry. He lives in San Anselmo. Okay, he doesn't live close here. He has no connection with us. But like I say, he put in the second most hours. He was a contractor, and he built a new floor for that. You can drive a semi-truck across it, and it's not going to fall in on it. We use all metal studs. I did that for a couple of reasons. We'd use half-inch sheetrock instead of 5/8 sheetrock. If we had to use wood studs, I would have had to use 5/8 sheetrock on it. Bob Manzoni, here he is screwing it together. He's legally blind and has trouble finding the head of the screws, but he managed to do it. He did a lot of work here. Diane Campbell, cutting the studs and getting them ready for us. She was our only, outside of my daughter, my only female worker on the project. Metal studs, all the people here were residential. They didn't know anything about metal studs and that type of construction. So I had to teach them metal stud, that construction on it. The hole up on the second floor, again, Bob Lowry rebuilt it, and you can drive a truck over it and it's not going to fall down on it. The city came to me and wanted to know what I was going to do with the outside of the building. And I says, hey, the agreement was I do the inside, you do the outside. So they put the job out to bid, and Mary Ann's painting got the job.
Yay!
Happened to be my daughter, but you know. And there they are working on the building. All the paint was peeling off of it. The original paint job that was put on in 99 was flaking off. And I don't know how many bags of flakes they started pressure washing the building, and it looked like a snowstorm around here. We had people down the street complaining about the flakes flying into their property on it. But the main part of a good paint job is you've got to prepare the building, and that wasn't prepared. Took all the paint off, and there was still mold underneath it, you know. So they also repainted the front doors to match them the colors that we wanted on it. She also got her men as part of a volunteer part to come in and do some work in the upstairs on so they did the texturing upstairs. You can see the difference between the texturing upstairs and the texturing downstairs. The difference between a professional and amateurs on it. But I thank her for that. There's Dan Johnson smiling for the camera on it. We covered the whole thing with metal studs and sheetrock. This guild wanted to know why I was going to the extra expense to do all that work. And I said, well, for 3 reasons. I said, it'll cover any lead paint that might still be there, so we won't have a liability with the public in here. I said, second, I can run all my electrical behind that for about a quarter to a third the cost that it would cost me to run it all exposed on it. And third, I said, the curator would have a hell of a time putting those push pins into the concrete. And that's the exact reaction I got from the board. Never said a thing after that on it. A typical woman makes sure the place is cleaned up all the time, you know, which was, we appreciated that on it. And there's the area up there in the lobby area where you can see all the way through on it. That's what it looks like now on it. More of the metal frame work on it. Being that the floor in here is not level, there's about a 4-inch dip over there and about a 3.5-inch dip over here where it comes in. I found that out when I tried to wash the floor down with water. We had a heck of a time with the lift because it has to be level. So we had to shim the lift up every time we moved it to make it level so we could go up and down with it and get the sheetrock in there. That's Roland Fluette. He also did a lot of work here on it. We were lucky at that time. There was a kind of a lull in construction work and stuff, and we had some people out of work came by and volunteered and helped maybe a day or so. But we had one fellow that it was actually Roland's next door neighbor that had just retired as a carpenter, and he helped put up most of the sheetrock. We had 3 guys cutting pieces of sheetrock for him to put up, and he had to stand around waiting for them. It's a difference between volunteers and professionals on it. You know. Here's up looking at the top of the men's room. Roland had a vacuum cleaner sanding machine that he used. Our guys did all the taping and all the electrical in here was done by Tom Keena and myself. So everything you see in here electrical has all been done by volunteers. Tom's an licensed electrical contractor, and I've been an electrician since I was 14. So I don't know if you've noticed the control panel for the lights up there. It's all low voltage, or most of it's low voltage. We priced a panel for the low voltage. They wanted $1,200 for it. Tom and I built one for $300 on it. In fact, that's him putting in the box for it. All the work, with the 2 exceptions, I guess, or 3, was done by volunteers. The T-bar ceiling up in the reception area. I priced it out, and I got a price from this gentleman. He and his daughter do it, and they were between jobs, and he gave me a heck of a good price. I couldn't afford to do it myself for the price he gave me. So he and his daughter came in, and in 2 days they had the whole thing done. You can see our temporary lighting there. We got about $9,000 worth of recycled electrical equipment here. You saw the circuit breaker panel, the light fixtures up above there. They were donated by electrical contractor. They had been ordered for 101 Montgomery Street in San Francisco. They were the wrong design. They didn't meet the building specifications. So there's a whole pallet of them that's sitting there, and they said I could have a couple. I misinterpreted it, and I left them a couple. And they sat there for over a year. So all the light fixtures up there were donated, and we installed those. All these lights, the lights up here, they all came from the Officers Club. To get around Title 24, and this was the head building inspector told me this. None of these lights are permanent. They're all have, if you look up there, they're all got plugs on them. You can unplug and then there'd be no lights in here. So it didn't count under Title 24. Originally, these were not fluorescent lights. They were incandescent lights. And each one of those pigtails is 10 bucks. They came from San Francisco. Like I say, we had a lot of stuff. We also, furniture-wise, we had a lot of donations on it. Charles Schwab was moving out of 101 California, or Montgomery Street. I was a building engineer there for a short time. And so when they started moving out, chief engineer said I could take what I needed, and I did. The rug in here is not only here, a couple buildings in the firehouse have a rug. Firehouse in Rio Vista, their rec room is carpeted in the same stuff on it. And I have enough left over to do the museum downtown if we ever get the new one. That's another story on it. The hand railing here had to be remade because it was originally attached to the concrete, and of course we were out there, so Bob Lowry re-welded that and remounted that on it. Like I say, he was very instrumental in everything we did. There we are, laying the carpet and on it, rolling through that, laying the carpet. Everybody was, we had the whole crew was laying carpet on there. Display case behind me was designed by Bob Lowry. John Trumbull supplied all the planes. A friend of his put them all together. So that was a joint project there on it. One of the other jobs that I had farmed out, one of my workers, it wasn't my idea. Everything here was my ideas. There were a few of them that came from other people. But they said we needed an awning out there. So we got prices from a couple people for awnings. And this contractor got the price for the awning, and they're installing it out there. The whole building is wired for electronics. Steve McCubbin, who is another volunteer fireman, he was in the communications business, and he's kind of set up our communication system here, wired everything up so that the library down here, my office and everything, and spots upstairs all had jacks in there that we could plug in whatever we wanted on it. When you came in, if you notice the reception desk up there, that's about a $4,000 desk. We had a contractor come through here. There was a cabinet maker, and he said, "Boy, that's sure nice." He says, "That's about a $4,000 piece of furniture," because I didn't know what it was. That came from a lawyer's office at 550 Kearny Street in San Francisco. I played chief engineer in that building for for vacation relief on it. Tried to get it for almost a year, and they finally decided that the building manager thought maybe the new tenants could use it. Well, new tenants finally said no, they don't want it. So Roland Fluette and I and a couple other people got a couple pickup trucks, and we were over there that day, and that Saturday, and picked it up. I had keys to the building, so we were in, got it, and out of there before somebody changed their mind on it. Bob Manzoni painting all the boards, display boards and stuff, getting ready for opening. John Trumbull put UV film on all the windows, which has helped a lot. You can see in the library some of the pictures on the wall that were hanging over building 500 that didn't have UV filters on it, and they're all faded out on it. There's Bob Manzoni on the telephone. He was always on the telephone on it. Bob Lowry built bookshelves in the library. We ended up with a full library. John Trumbull cleaned out his house, and his wife was really happy.
Another museum.
On it. Like I said, all the lights in here and everything, all this stuff is donated and all done in-house. That's a Hap Arnold display that we got from Sonoma Museum. They were going to take it down and store it, and they wanted to know if I wanted it. And I went up and picked it up right away on it. We had a curator from the city when we first opened it, helped us get opening. There were a couple problems there. She thought mannequins were too expensive, and you didn't need mannequins. Well, as you can see, I have a lot of mannequins. I couldn't figure out how to display uniforms and stuff without a mannequin. You know, it just didn't work out on it. I don't know if it was good or bad, but she got cut from the city in one of their cutbacks on it. And we were able to go ahead. It took a year to get that Hap Arnold display because I had turned it over to her and nothing got done So they called me up and said, "Do you want it?" And I said, "Yes." And so I went right up and got it on it. And we've had it ever since. I check with them every year, and they say, no problem on it. There's a front reception area. One of the things that the city curator did was these big posters, pictures on the wall. That was one of her main contributions on it. On May 12th, 2010, we opened the museum, had the ribbon cutting. 75 years from the dedication of the base on it. We opened the museum. So that's how we got that far. From there on, that's another story. Are there any questions or whatever? Yeah.
Hey, Ray, I was curious, did the firehouse ever have a fire pole?
Yes, it did. And if you look over on the far side here, you'll see a pole hanging down. That pole came from station 64 of the Novato Fire Department. There's a hole up there that's been covered over, and that's half the pole. I gave half the pole to the Fire Department Museum on it. And I didn't want the pole going all the way down to the ground anyway, you know. Everything in here is movable. That's the way I designed it. We've had 70 people at a sit-down meal and stuff here. My projector system is set up so I can project the same thing on both screens. Can also do it from down here or the back room. During normal business hours, we display things on the projectors from the back room there on it. Did I see somebody else over here that have a question? Yeah.
I have a question. It's because of the lighting and so forth, it's difficult to see the things that are up there. When it's retained, when it's saved, will it be so that it's easier to see it?
They're videoing it, and I'll supply a set of slides, and she will insert the slides in there.
Right.
She's just videotaping me, and got an hour of bum tape on it. You want to get the lights? I don't know, are there any other questions? But we had some real good help the whole time. And I could have done it by myself. Oh, there's...
Are these Mexico, are they similar to what was here?
They were not the original doors. They were...
Not the original, but are they similar to what was here?
Yes. The Historical Guild supplied pictures of the existing doors, what we could, and then they copied them in, yeah. So.
Ray, thank you so much for the one. And we'd like to present you with this plaque. Yes, on behalf of the Guild, we present you with this plaque to honor your year's service shepherding the Hamilton Museum project, from being project superintendent of the museum construction and director of the museum to the present. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
going to be a permanent one.
A permanent
You want-
one's coming that's metal, and it wasn't prepared in time, so this is a replica of it.
Oh, well, this is nice. Yeah.
Take this one home, and the other one you can hang.
I'll mount here.
Yeah.
So what did
Well,
you say?
being a volunteer, you get a lot of awards. I have, from the fire department with 35 years there, I've got all kinds of plaques and things, you know, on it. Same here in the wall up above there in my office. I've got a bunch of them. I also have some at home too, on it. So I don't know what my kids are going to do when I go, but they can build a good bonfire, I guess.
They should build a special museum.
Well, the fire department museum, myself and Steve McCubbin, that you saw a picture of, started a fire department museum originally, and we had that one for several years. Then I got out of that one, and they moved it over to Station 1, 61, over there on it. All right.
Well, before we leave, I just want to compliment Ray, and I think we need to give him a huge round of applause.
That's what keeps me going, volunteering. People appreciate it.